All right, so let us tell you guys a story real quick. About 9 years ago, Brit and I were at a crossroads in our lives. We were strapped with debt, could barely afford the gasoline to drive to work, and we're also about to get married.
A few months before our wedding, we were given a decent amount of money from our families as a wedding gift, and it was up to us on how we wanted to spend it.
Now, at the time, we weren't planning on spending very much on our weddings because we couldn't afford it. But this extra cash would have allowed us to have much more of the wedding that we wanted. It wasn't enough to pay for anything huge, but it would allow for a significant upgrade than what we were planning.
So we had a decision to make. We could use the money for our wedding, or we could use it on something else like our honeymoon, furniture, you name it.
Around the same time all this was going on, we were introduced to somebody who would end up giving us advice that little did we know at the time would change our lives forever.
And this advice wasn't life-changing because it was some secret that had been hidden under a rug for 200 years. It was life-changing because it gave us the perspective to recognize the way we had been living our lives up until this point was not going to get us to where we wanted to be in the future.
It did make us realize that if we were disciplined and courageous enough, we actually stood a good chance of paying off all this $120,000 of debt that we owed. Not only that, but it showed us that we could place ourselves on a path to becoming multi-millionaires and being able to create the future that we actually did want.
It was upon hearing this advice that we decided to change some things about how we were living. So instead of using the extra cash that we received from our families for our wedding, we decided to use it to pay down our debt.
We spent a grand total of $800 on our wedding. We skipped the honeymoon. Over the next 3 years of our lives, we tripled our income and were able to pay off every last penny of debt that we owed. And now today, we are still debt-free and are in a place where half of our monthly expenses could be paid for with passive income if we wanted them to be.
So in this video, we're going to go over 10 principles we've learned over the past 9 years that we've either learned from millionaires or on our own that have helped us get to the place we are right now.
And if you guys are curious, the gentleman we mentioned earlier who gave us the life-changing advice, his name was Dave Ramsey. Some of you may be familiar with him. But a couple of the first few principles we're going to mention, we actually learned from him.
Number 1, spending more money than you have right now will make you poorer in the future.
Now this one may seem a bit obvious, but to Brittany and I, it wasn't way back then because we were spending way more money than we were bringing in income.
Yeah. And it's very easy to buy something nowadays that you don't have the cash for. You can put it on a credit card, finance it through a bank, put it over a payment plan over the next 12 to 72 months.
Unfortunately, what this does, though, is it takes the money you would be earning in the future and it earmarks it for things right now, which means in doing this, you're really just borrowing from your future.
Plus, you pay interest on all of it. If you continue buying things you don't need with money you don't have, you'll eventually have to sell the things you do need.
Plus, there's no money left over for buying things that actually will make you wealthy in the future, like the stock market or real estate or things like that.
And number 2, going into debt for liabilities will make you poorer over time.
By liabilities, we're not talking about things like real estate or things that go up in value. We're talking about things that depreciate and lose value over time. So basically things that, like Brittany and I went into debt for. So student loans, cars, maybe furniture or clothes or computers or things like that. Things that will decrease your net worth the longer you own them.
And when you do this, you're not only borrowing from your future, but you're also paying interest to own something that's decreasing in value over time.
Number 3, massive results require massive action.
Looking back on it, there was no way we were going to be able to pay off all that debt if we were only doing it halfway. We had to take massive action because we had massive amounts of debt.
So between the two of us, we got 5 or 6 jobs, increased our income from between like $40,000 and $50,000 a year to over $140,000 a year, and made our entire lives about paying off debt. Now, this lifestyle wasn't without its trade-offs, but it worked very well.
Number 4, to get over the fear of taking risks, you must take risks.
And I wish there were another way, guys. There's no other way that we've learned. This is a tough one because I think a lot of us, I would venture to say maybe even the vast majority of us, have some sort of fear about taking risks because there's this hesitation or concern or worry that we're going to be losing our time or like something that we worked really hard for or
money,
or that we're going to be laughed at by other people if we fail. This is a tough one, especially for me. But honestly, like if you're going to get ahead with your money or really with anything in life, you're eventually going to have to take a risk.
So there's this calculated risk formula we learned a while ago, and it asks you to think about 3 things when you're making a decision that involves risk.
So the first thing is, what is the best case scenario? And then what is the worst case scenario? And then what is most likely to happen? If the worst case scenario is not going to be detrimental to you, if you can handle it, and what's most likely to happen is just going to move you forward, closer to where you want to be, it's generally believed that you should take the risk.
Number 5, investing in yourself allows you to bet on yourself. Your brain is the most powerful tool at your disposal. It's also what separates you from everything else on this earth. You have the potential to return exponentially more than the S&P 500 index ever could. And that's because when you invest in yourself, anything's possible.
The sixth principle is that multiple sources of income are always better than one. This is because if you only have one source of income, it's kind of like putting all of your eggs in one basket. If that basket breaks, you're kind of out of luck. So creating multiple sources of income helps reduce the risk of your financial life if something were to happen to the one you may have now. So toward the beginning of our journey, I read something in a book that went like this. It said, if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. Now, I didn't know this at the time, but this is something that Warren Buffett said. But it stuck with me because not only did I not want to work until I died, up until that point in my life, my whole purpose surrounding like work and making money was just to survive. It wasn't about like trying to build anything or get further. This one sentence made me question like, oh, I could make money while I sleep? How do I do that? And it led me down this path of like learning how to build passive income and things like that, which, as we said before, could allow us right now, if we wanted to pay for half of our monthly expenses without having to do anything.
And number 7, think of your primary job as investing. And we learned this from Jeremy over at Financial Education. If you haven't heard of his channel, you can go check it out.
So whether that investing be in the stock market or in your own business or in real estate or in yourself or all of the above, what you may think of as your primary job right now, like your day-to-day job, that's just a way to make you money to help you with what should be your primary job of investing. And until you get to the point of being able to invest full time, any money you make right now is just going to help you get there faster.
And number 8, leaders are readers. And this has more to do with learning, basically from reading. A lot of people think learning stops after school. And I think this is mainly a byproduct of our education system.
Yeah, so we spend the first 18 to 22 years of our lives learning to learn one way, and that is at school in a classroom. And it conditions us to think that this is the only way to learn. And the reality is that a lot of us just don't enjoy learning this way.
Yeah, that was the case for both of us.
Yeah, so when they're done with school, they just want to leave as quickly as possible and never learn again because they just hate it and they're burnt out with it. But the truth is there are tons of ways to learn, and learning is actually like super exciting. And there's also a reason that like super expensive homes and mansions and things like that have libraries in them. Millionaires, wealthy people, highly successful people never stop learning. The moment you stop learning is the moment you stop expanding your mind, and that's the moment you start dying in the marketplace. And these next 2 principles, guys, are probably the most important principles in this video. If you've glazed over everything else we've said up until this point, if your eyes are kind of like in the clouds somewhere, please come back down to the ground and at least listen to what we're going to say for these next 2 principles, because they're extremely important.
Number 9, the middle class talks about people and the rich talk about ideas.
Have you ever been in an environment where everyone around you was so focused on what everyone else was doing instead of what they themselves were doing? You can write your experience in the comments if you want to. Mm-hmm. But if you've ever been in that environment, I'm sure you're aware of how toxic it is.
And how demotivating and draining it is just to get stuff done. So
the execution of ideas, even ones that may not sound all that good at first, is what makes successful people successful. Successful people are successful because they can execute on ideas. They may not even be good, but they're good at the execution. Talking about other people will focus your mind on what other people are doing rather than the only person who is responsible for your success, and that is you. It's
not other people who are going to make you successful, it's you. You may not be able to control what other people talk about around you or what they do, but you are 100% in control about what you do and what you say.
And the very last principle we're going to mention in this video, number 10, if you wait for someone else's approval to start pursuing your dreams, you may never actually get to the place where you start pursuing them.
Yeah, don't wait for someone else to give you approval. And this was a mistake Mike and I both made.
For myself, it was primarily in college. And not everyone's going to have the same college experience as I did, but almost everything I was told about college turned out not to be true. I didn't need a degree to become successful. I didn't need debt to pay for it. I didn't need college to get a good paying job. And my college years were definitely not the best years of my life. Now, this was a mistake I made, believing that I needed a degree to become successful. Now, obviously, there are some things that you do need a degree to do, like, doctors, nurses,
lawyers, etc.
Things like that. But that's not what I wanted to do. For 8 years of my life, I intentionally and willingly kept myself in an environment that didn't go well with how I learned, that I hated being in, that kept me bored out of my mind, all to pursue a shiny piece of sheepskin that I thought would give me permission to start pursuing my dreams. What I learned shortly before dropping out, one of the big reasons I did drop out, is that this is just not true.
And you don't need approval to start that business, change your career, follow a new dream, whatever it may be. All you have to do is just start.
And that's all we got for this video, guys. We hope this was informative, maybe inspirational or educational in some way. If you got this far, drop us a comment. Did you learn anything? Maybe you know some things that we didn't mention in this video from people that you've met or have read from or watched or whatever, some principles that you have implemented in your own life that have made you successful in some way. Thanks so much for watching. We appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a huge thumbs up. It helps out tremendously with the YouTube algorithm.
Also, subscribe for more, and you can follow us on Instagram at It's Mike and Brit. We post there every now and then.
Yeah. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.